and then the resourcing that you have now to feel into what made you say when you were younger, no, the right camp to be in is that there's not enough. The right camp to be in is that I won't be protected. The right camp to be in is that I won't be safe. Because if I start with that assumption, I can lean on myself to keep myself safe. Hey y'all, it's Chimdi. So I recently asked you all what questions, topics, etc. were on your spirit, and you came through. And this question is from Catherine. She said, I appreciate you making this space and asking us. You're welcome. I'd love to hear about decision making and how we can align choices to make sure they serve our true selves. Example, I always struggle with choosing between living for the moment and doing the practical thing for the long term. I've learned so much from you. Would be great to hear your thoughts on this and your systems processes for making hard decisions. Such a great question. It's something I also am constantly learning and exploring about. One of the biggest videos on my channel is a reflection of me taking 3 years to make a hard decision, and it was me quitting my job. I knew within 6 months of taking that job that it wasn't for me, and I stayed in that job for 3.5 years. So it took me a long time to really heal around the part of me that didn't understand that my life was my own, that I knew what was best for me, that I could trust that I'd be taken care of, and that, I had the resources and the skills to make a life for myself that would be beautiful and would be incredible. And it took me years and years and years and years and years, and I still find myself deciding to have experiences and opportunities that upon reflection were being driven by trauma and being driven by unhealed feelings and pain and things like that, and having to then leave situations that I realized, like, girl, no, this is not aligned. This is something that I'm truly in every moment constantly refining and getting better and better at. There were a few things that came to mind. I took some notes for you. First is this idea of, are we going to be okay? From a young age, some of us are very blessed to be in situations where we never wonder, am I gonna be okay? Is our family gonna be okay? Are we gonna make it through this? Because there's such support, there's such resources, there's such strength, there's such abundance in the mindsets and in the lives of the people who surround us that it never even occurs to us to wonder, am I gonna be okay? Are we going to be okay? And then of course, a bunch of us did not have that experience. And so from a very young age, we were surrounded by people who were living in fear, living in lack, living in uncertainty, and genuinely had to work very hard and struggle very, very hard in order to make it through. And that taught us in a subconscious way that life is one. For me, it taught me, especially when I saw the way my parents worked so hard as immigrants, I really understood then, well, life is a struggle. Life is hard. Life takes a lot of hard work to get by. And you can be a good person and you can have a good heart, but it does not matter. You still have to work very hard. And if you're lucky, if you are just so lucky, if you are the 1%, then you get the chance to live a life of freedom. But the rest of us, the 99%, that is not our fate. And you should just accept it and be grateful that you get to have any job, much less a job that pays well, much less a job for me that's like remote, all these different things. Because for the majority of us, we are going to have to work very, very hard and be in situations that we don't like in order to make it in this world. And that is what a lot of us learn, which is it's a really heartbreaking thing to learn. And that's been part of my journey, is understanding that there's a reason why some folks are still in a survival mindset. And it's not because they don't want to thrive. It's not because they don't want to live in abundance. It's because of their experiences. So it speaks to just how difficult their experiences were, that after long periods of time, they still are unable to leave this survival mindset. It speaks to the amount of resourcing they have, that even with where they are in their life, they still don't feel like they can explore possibly not being in a constant survival state. And that calls for a lot of compassion, like a lot of compassion for these folks and for ourselves when we find ourselves still struggling between this thing feels good and it feels aligned and it feels true, but a part of me is saying, no, it's not practical. It's going to be a bad decision. You're going to be unsafe. You're going to be in danger. You're going to be poor. You're going to be lacking. So it's important that you override what you know in your heart feels good and feels true to instead keep yourself safe. And that is an intelligent thing that we learn from a very young age. That's like the biggest thing I've learned from Thomas Hubel and the trauma healing I'm doing is just how intelligent our body and our systems are. And it's not about our body and our systems being wrong when we choose something that's more practical versus something that maybe feels good and feels true in the moment. It's because we learned early and it kept us safe. And now the fact that we're having these questions means we're more resourced and we're more capable to actually wrestle and really sit with those earlier experiences when it just really wasn't safe. That's kind of like the biggest thing I'm learning. All of our questions just point to some past thing we learned that didn't make sense, but it was more important to follow that path than to do what was true and what did make sense in that moment, because that's what would keep us safe. Like when we're young, becoming and belonging are the two most important things. Being able to be in our community, in our family, in our home and be loved, and being able to actually express ourselves. And often we'll have to choose between the two. And sometimes we'll choose belonging. We'll say, I'm going to shut down these parts of myself. I'm going to shut down these ways of expressing myself so that I can have love, because it's really important that I have this love. And sometimes we choose, no, I have to be myself. I have to do this, that, and the third. And that means not belonging in communities and not having love and friendship and safety in that way, because it's more important for us to express ourselves. And so we'll find that our adult life mirrors which choice we made when we were younger if we weren't sort of resourced with both becoming and belonging at the same time. So when considering whether or not a situation is aligned, what you're really asking yourself is, am I ready to feel those situations from earlier in my life where it was more important to override what was aligned and make this other choice? The reason why we did that then is because it would have been too intense, and our body and our mind knew that. It knew it'll be too intense, girl, if you make the aligned decision. We know that we don't have the resources to be able to make this decision and be happy and healthy and safe. So I am going to need you, girl, to make this other decision. Later, when you're grown, you'll ask Chimdi a question on YouTube about it, and then we can go on a whole journey. But in this moment, I'm going to need you to override that. And chances are, because our intuition is so important to us, making decisions that are aligned with our heart is so crucial to us. It's so crucial to our soul expression. So if something happened that said your soul expression is going to need to take a back seat right now, chances are that was pretty intense. If you're ready to feel those really intense feelings, and they were intense for who we were then, and when they come up now, we revert back. So we feel like we can't handle it because we go back to being this 3-year-old having this experience. But the reality is that you are grown now. So you actually do have a lot of resources. And when you feel like you can, you will bring these feelings up and they will flow out of you because you're good now. It's just that the part of you that's holding on to it is much younger and doesn't realize that you're a whole grown person who can handle these really intense situations. The other thing I want to talk about is this idea of abundance, because I think when it comes to making a decision now versus making a decision that's practical, the thought is that I won't have X, Y, or Z in the future. And so I need to think about my future self who will be lacking. So we're telling ourselves, embedded in that is a story of lack. It's saying right now I have X, in the future I won't. And we're saying it as if there's no question. That's how deeply ingrained it is. It's a belief. It's saying with certainty, I will not have X, which is interesting, right? It's interesting sort of which stories culturally, politically, societally, from family, from friends that we're being fed that say you will not have this, that, and the third. It's a lack mindset, and it takes a lot of vigilance and a lot of desire to see and start noticing where those lack mindsets are, and then to do the work in our own life and our own experience to be able to access our actual incredible abundance. So that's been my understanding when it comes to some of these things where we're thinking about our future self, is that we have certain assumptions that we don't even question about what we won't have. And the people who do have those things are the exception. We're like, no, but they're special, they're different, and I won't be like them. And it's like, you won't be special? You won't be different? And that's our own journey, right? If there's a story we've been telling ourselves that says, yeah, I'm not special, I'm not different, I shouldn't expect more from myself, I shouldn't expect myself to stand out, I shouldn't expect to be resourced when I'm older, when things change. And so I should prepare for the reality. That's what's real, is that you will have lack and that you won't have. You gotta start thinking about which camp you're in, you know? And as I said, the intelligence of the camp you chose and then the resourcing that you have now to feel into what made you say when you were younger, no, the right camp to be in is that there's not enough. The right camp to be in is that I won't be protected. The right camp to be in is that I won't be safe. Because if I start with that assumption, I can lean on myself to keep myself safe, and to keep myself protected, to keep myself financed, and to keep myself resourced. And then of course that leads to a lot of suffering, because if we were meant to live life alone, we wouldn't be on a planet with 1 billion people on it, you know? Like, we're supposed to live interdependently. No one actually can live alone. When we breathe in, the trees are supporting us, you know? Like, no one lives alone. But if we've been taught that the people in our lives can't be relied on, we begin to believe that we must do it alone, and that our survival is actually dependent on doing it alone. So it really, like, the question you're asking is really about how much compassion can you have for the parts of yourself that had to make unaligned choices in order to survive, and are you resourced enough to be able to feel those intense feelings, and then it will naturally allow you to make different choices. It's not about one decision to the next. There's a belief system and there's a way of thinking, there's a set of experiences that inform all of the decisions. So it's going to be the same decision in relationships, in finances, in work, in where you live, in your friendships. It's the same belief system around, can I trust? Is there enough? Am I enough? Am I going to be okay? And once you heal sort of the foundational things, it ripples out into all of your decisions. And then you stop having these questions because it's apparent to you and you've learned that you can trust yourself and you can trust your decisions. I hope this is helpful, Catherine. Thank you for asking the question. Patreon people, thank you for supporting me. Y'all are the best. And I'll see the rest of y'all in another video. Bye.